ONS meeting. Laura, could you read the webcasting introduction, please?
I would like to remind everyone that this meeting will be filmed live or recorded and uploaded to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. Therefore, by participating in this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings. If any public speakers on MS Teams do not wish to have their image captured, they should ensure that their video setting throughout the meeting is turned off and set to audio only. Members and public speakers are reminded to turn on their microphones before speaking and turn them off when they've finished.
Thank you for that. So, welcome to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Wednesday, the 26th of February 2025. Tonight in the chamber to my left we have Mandy Thompson and James Warwick, Service Directors. And to my right we have Laura Kerman from Democratic Services, and Rebecca Morton is the webcaster. Jen Gould, the Deputy Chief Executive and Lead for Scrutiny, is online this evening. Okay. And so let's go on to item 2, which is, are there any apologies? Excuse me.
Apologies have been received from Councillor Bassett and Councillor Markham, and both Councillor Murray and Councillor George have apologised for lateness.
Thank you. Are there any substitutions?
Councillor Dadd is substituting for Councillor Bassett and Councillor Burrows is substituting for Councillor Markham.
Okay, thank you very much. And members, are there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Item 6 in the agenda, matters arising and outstanding actions. Oh, sorry, have I missed out?
You need to do the
minutes. I'm very sorry. Can members confirm the minutes of the last meeting? Agreed, thank you. Sorry, yeah. So matters arising and outstanding actions. I would like to advise members of the committee that further to an informal meeting, the call-in on the Cottage Lane acquisition has been withdrawn. Members were advised of the outcome via email. Okay. And item 7, which is public questions and requests to address the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Any questions or requests to address the committee?
None, Chairman.
None. Okay, thank you very much. Then we go to item 8, which is executive call-in. Are there any call-ins?
No, Chairman.
Thank you. And item 9, which is development management. This is an update on the implementation of the PAS report. And can I go over to Graham Courtney, who will provide us with an update? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I haven't really prepared much for this. We, as many of you are aware, we have now implemented our committee restructure, our committee changes. That was as of October 2024. We've had 6 committees so far, 3 Planning Committee A's and 3 Planning Committee B's. I'd like to say they've been quite successful. There are obviously a few teething issues, some things that are still out, still being discussed and ironed out, as it were. We've had some additional training set up. So far we've had some training on viability, we've had some training on the updated NPPF. We're literally just arranging, we've got some a date in the diary now for a custom house building and self-build housing. That's coming up soon, and we're just arranging some SIL and Section 106 training and some urban design training. So we've got some more training coming up very soon, so we will obviously circulate those dates as soon as they are finalised. And then lastly, we have a review booked in, I think, for July, I believe it is, to have a look at the new structure, make sure it's all working, and implement any changes we may feel necessary. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just go over to the committee and just ask if you have any questions or comments. Councillor Dadd. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. As a relatively new member who's experienced both types of committees, I would say, and also having been on a PAS training at my own expense, I might add, I would say that this is a great improvement on what's happened in the past. However, I do think there are some teething problems that perhaps need to be sorted out before the early review. Quite a few people have mentioned it to me, either as residents and also some councillors. And that includes, for example, the length of the agenda or the length of the meeting, and perhaps the frequency of meetings could perhaps change. If you've got a 3-hour meeting, it can, I think, be too long. Also, the working party, the Constitution Working Group said there should be site visits for all items on the agenda unless the chairman thought it was not necessary. And as far as I can see, that the not necessary seems to be becoming the exception rather than the rule, and I'd rather question that. And another point is that a lot of committee members are still spending time on highways matters when the highways have made no objection, and perhaps some more training needs to be put on committee members about what they can and can't refuse things on. Well, those are some points, and I think perhaps those need to be considered and looked at again before July. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I go over to...
Thank you. Yeah, just on that, as I mentioned, we are expecting to have a vice chair meeting. We're just waiting for Gary to sort out the date for that. I think there was a bit of a clash on the original date, so I'd like to think that certainly those matters will be discussed there, and if need be, we can actually look at maybe having a wider meeting with all the planning committee members in attendance, where we can discuss some of these matters sort of ahead of July. I think we can certainly look at sorting that out.
Councillor Wiskin, would you like to go? Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I had the pleasure of being a sub on the committee meeting last week, and frankly, I think there was an element of chaos. They were far too long. The absence, as Councillor Dadd has stated, of site visits, I think is actually letting down our constituents and our public, because let's not forget, a bad planning decision can wreck somebody's life. And if we haven't taken the time out to visit those sites, we're letting people down. The aspect of training for councillors, it's not just those on the planning committees, because we have to sub. So it should be extended across and targeted at all of the councillors, because any of us could be asked to substitute. I think that's most important. What I found particularly, I think, galling in last week's meeting was that the decision was almost made on the basis that we must not reject this because we will lose at an appeal. That is not a reason, in my view, for just simply rubber stamping and approving applications. We should not be threatened by this in this process. We should be making informed decisions, which was the whole purpose of the PAS report. The lack of training, the lack of, in fact, the inclusion of parish and town councillor input is the reason why the agenda have been extended. And that was a last-minute decision from Councillor Jones, I believe, and it's accepted at the meeting. And I think Councillor Dadd is right, that the frequency has to be upped if that is the status. And if anything, I think the review of this should be brought forward.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, could you...
Yeah, sorry, Nigel Richardson, as you know, Planning Service Director.
Yeah.
We've only had 6 meetings. In all fairness, you've been to 1. So I'm a bit concerned that we're talking about doing reviews already when we enter time, really, for this to bed in. I think you're right. Last week's meeting went on till 10 o'clock at night. Those of you who have been here long enough to know that planning committees, it wasn't unusual for meetings to go on till 10 o'clock at night when we used to have a lot more items on the agenda. I think members are invited to the training. It's not just the members of the planning committee. My understanding is that any of you can come along. We are ramping those up, the training sessions, and some of them will be fairly bespoke. So what worried me in what you've just said, and I need to have clarity on this, probably have to watch the meeting myself, is a threat of appeal. Now, if that came from an officer, then we need to get to the bottom of that. So what I'd like to know through you, Chairman, is where did the threat of appeal come from, if I may ask that question?
Can I refer that to you, Councillor Whiskey?
I believe that came from an officer. Please don't quote me precisely. It was on the item regarding the solar farm in Berwick Lane, I believe it is, and it was made quite clear that there was precedent elsewhere, which personally I didn't think quite matched that which was stated by the officer. May I come back on something else as well? Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, okay, thank you. Yeah.
I was also going to add, as Mr. Richardson said, the planning is, the training, we are aware that it's extended to all councillors. Very little has been undertaken. That was partially my point. The second point I was going to make is in defence of our colleagues here, the budget for planning has been severely cut for the next year, and I'm concerned how they can operate effectively under the pressure they are with the work they have with that cut.
Thank you. Councillor Kesker, would you like to reply to?
Well, if you don't mind, Chairman, if I could simply add a couple of points here. It's not new for chairmen of planning committees to ask the planning officer who is advising them how they see the decision going. And very often, over the years, the many years I've been on planning, not unusual at all for a planning officer to say, we would find this very difficult to defend on appeal. Now, that's not telling us what we should do, it's simply stating the situation that should be made clear. I think in solar farms we have an additional pressure because we have the government breathing down our necks that they want to cover England in solar farms, whether we like it or not. But that, again, is not a reason for us to approve if we think that it should be refused, but we should be going into it with all the information in front of us so that we are aware of what the outcome of our decision making could be. And could I just add that in terms of training, yes, it's open to all councillors and all councillors in town and parish councils as well. But of course, anyone who served on the old planning committees would have had training anyway. So it's not as if we're starting with a blank sheet. We are starting with a number of councillors who've had experience and training. And the training, and I've attended all of the training has been exceptionally good. I have to say, it's been very informative. And I think everyone has come away from that. It's a shame more people didn't attend, I've got to say. But nevertheless, I think they've all come away having learned a great deal from the training sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kesker, for that. Mr. Richardson, would you like to come back at all? No or no?
I think the only thing I would say is Councillor Kesker's correct, and I'm sure Councillor Whiskin was there, but as you know, we do training at the beginning of the year. We do quite a detailed training session. Remember, these training sessions we're doing now are more bespoke on specific topics. And I must admit, they're actually quite hard to get them diaried in. But we're doing our best. So there will be more. You will be continuously educated on the wonders of planning.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you. Councillor Lyon, you've been waiting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Chair, maybe I should declare an interest because I am chair of the Constitution Working Group, where this has had a fairly interesting review. And it's worth mentioning that a couple of things that have come up at the last meeting of that group, and one of them was the training programme. And I'm pleased to see we actually have a training programme, but I would also like to see the dates, because the last 2 sessions were rather ad hoc, and actually it was added at a very late stage. So the earlier we get these dates and the more communication we can get with members, the better. And certainly I would appreciate that. The other thing that did come up at the Constitution Working Group was single householder applications, and I think that's something for discussion elsewhere. The other thing is I would urge members to review the Cabinet report, because that's where the PAS recommendations were actually reported, and I think that is the main reasons why we've restructured the meetings as we have, and PAS were quite concerned about some of the situations that we've experienced. So I think we've made a useful start, but there is still a long way to go, and I think training is the biggest issue. And if we could get dates on that programme that you've got there in 1.10, that would be a step in the right direction. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, that's noted. Councillor Lee. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I quite agree about site visits, but I don't drive very far, and I'm sure I'm not the only councillor. And it took us over 2 hours doing a site visit. Luckily, Dave took me round everywhere. But I don't know why we can't all have to meet here and a minibus take us round to these places, because we've had minibuses take us to things before over the years. And I have mentioned this before, because it's impossible sometimes. There's no way am I driving all the way over to Ongar to have a look at something when I hardly drive any distance anymore, and I can't be the only one it affects. So I quite agree with site visits, but I think it should be organised that we can either all come and meet here and a minibus take us around. That's just my opinion.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Can Councillor Kesker just come back, please?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Chairman. Just to say, the problem is it's not in the planning department's budget, and at the moment we can't get any other department to fund it either. As much as I would personally like to see that as a system, I know they do it at other councils, but it's not in the budget at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Barnard, please.
Thank you. Sorry, my point's slightly been overtaken. It was really just confirming what Councillor Wiskin had said about decisions that were thought best for the council being overturned on threat of appeal. I attended one in January where the chairman overturned the recommendation from the Planning Commission to approve the planning application in the Drummonds. Before a whispered conversation on the panel meant he reconsidered that, and the decision was approved.
Okay.
It was clear that that was a threat of...
Okay. Yep, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Did anyone want to come back on that?
Next is Councillor...
Shall I go to Councillor Whitbread? Do you want to reply to that?
Thank you, Chairman, and I'm happy for any of your committee to go before me because I'm a non-member.
There's no more committee.
No, I think that's fine.
Thank you very much. And I've attended 5 out of the 6 planning meetings so far. And obviously, the first one was very clunky, purely because of process and getting used to a new system. I think they've improved as we've gone along. There is 2 things I'd pick up, and I've attended all the planning training sessions as well, which I found really useful. And probably I've done more training on planning this year than I've done in any year since I've been on the council, which is 28 years. And I think the system does work, and we'll professionalise the system of planning as we get further down the tracks a piece. And of course, we had good reason for making these changes. And again, Councillor Lyon has referred back to the original Cabinet decision that supported the PAS changes. And I think that's important to realise. One of the key things here, I think members have to learn their role, and particular members who aren't on the committee but need to support their community, and it's how they go about that. You're never going to get perfect decision making because there'll always be someone who disagrees with the decision that's taken. You'll never please everybody, but what you have to do is take the decision on the best evidence and knowledge that you can have. And obviously we have to rely upon planning advice. I do think it's, let's go to the positives of what we've got from the first 6 meetings, and it's only 6 meetings. Legal advice present, big tick. Planning officer present, big tick. We've made some really good strides in the recent months, and actually there are 1 or 2 where you've picked up on the Heartland Road issue, but sometimes it's process rather than anything wrong. It's making sure that the process runs smoothly. So I think that there's lessons to be learned, and it's generally around process. There are lessons to be learned for members, because we're an important part of the process, and members understanding what they're actually doing at the committee as well, and making sure that if you're sitting on the committee that you've done training. That's essential. And we did say that. To me, it should be statutory training for planning. It's such an important role that we're doing. It's quasi-judicial, and it's really important what we're doing. So I actually think the planning training should be statutory. But you know, I think we've got to be careful here not to start, at such an early stage to throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is going. There's issues, but it's not. You're never going to get perfect to start with. But we are making good progress, and some of it is down to members not doing the training, not coming to meetings to represent their communities. I mean, we've had 2 or 3 major items in Ongar, for instance, where 2 of the councillors have been present, really arguing strongly for their residents. Someone else hasn't attended any. You've got to attend, and you've got to play your part. And I've attended. I've spoken on all my ward issues and beyond during that time, and I think that's what's important.
Thank you. Councillor Janet Whitehouse, please.
Thank you, Chairman. At the workshop on the PS report, many of us were very concerned at the reduction of planning committees from the 4 to 2, because the previous committees were geographically based, and we knew our areas really well. One of the assurances we're given was that all the sites would be visited, because obviously the members sitting on the new committees were not necessarily going to know all the areas. And my assumption was, that was a very important reassurance to us. My assumption was that that would be organised by the planning department to take everyone out at once, because it's just impossible for people to go out to the farther ends of the district and find their way to all kinds of little rural houses sometimes. And that hasn't happened, and I think that it needs to be looked at again, because site visits are immensely important, and as Councillor Lee said, not everybody is able to drive to these places. So I really think that needs to be looking at, and the budget just has to be found for it if you want this system to work. The other point I wanted to ask about was the review. It's supposed to be after 9 months. I wondered, when exactly it was going to be and how it was going to be done. Is there going to be consultation with all members, with the planning, with the parishes, with other people who are concerned? Because parishes were concerned that we went to the new system without any consultation, and they still get asked to be consulted on things, or they are consulted. So I'd be interested to know, the plans. Maybe not just now, but later on. It needs to be as wide as possible.
Okay, fine. Councillor Kesker, did you want to?
Yes, if I could just come back on that, on the review. I have to say, because this is such a new system, I would be absolutely against bringing the review forward. The proposal we've made for 9 months, I think, is absolutely right. That's not to say we can't learn things in the meantime, and we may make changes in the meantime, but the overall review, I think, should be left to the 9-month period as it was laid down when we made the decision initially.
Okay, thank you for that. And can I go to Councillor Morris, please? Thank you.
Hi, thanks. I just had one point to make on, I know a couple of people have mentioned the length of meetings, and I've been to some of the meetings on the old system and the new system with Planning Committee B, and I do notice the meetings tend to go on for a long time, but just that because that's always happened doesn't mean it's a good thing. I mean, one thing I'd like to be taken into account during the upcoming review in the 9-month cycle will be whether these very long-running meetings affect the quality of decision-making. I mean, I have noticed people get a bit tired towards the end of 3 hours, or if it goes on longer than that. And I'd like it to be considered whether that affects the quality of planning decisions when we look at the review.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Mr. Courtney, if you'd like to come back on that.
Sorry, more a question really. As it's been stated, we've only had 6 meetings so far, 3 of each. I know last week's meeting did go on till 10 o'clock. I mean, it had 6 items on the agenda, which, again, I've been here a long time, and I remember when we regularly had 12, 13 items, but that's irrelevant. It was probably a longer agenda than we've had previously. But aside from that one, I'm not entirely sure we've had meetings go on that long. I think, unless I'm wrong, and please, any members can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've had 1 long meeting out of those 6. But it sounds like it's a big issue, but actually I think we've had 1 meeting that went on longer than we expected, which again I'm not sure that would initiate an early review from 1 meeting.
Yeah, I'm not calling for an early review. I'm just saying it should be considered at the point of the review whether there is anything that can be done about the length of the agendas in the planning meetings.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'd just like to ask a question myself, and then we can move on. I think there's been an increase in delegated decisions. I just wonder if you could just comment on that, because I've noticed from my own ward, Forest Ward, there's been very, very few planning applications coming from Forest Ward. Now, I know that we do have the ability to call things in, but I have noticed a significant decrease in applications coming before the committee, indeed from Loughton, but from my own ward. So I just want to say, has there been an increase in delegated decision-making by officers? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think inevitably, if there's less things going to committee, there is going to be more delegated decisions. So that's the answer to that. I don't know if it'd be significant. We haven't had an increase in planning applications over and above this time last year. But yeah, if there's less things going to committee, there will be more delegated decisions.
Yeah.
Anything I'd like to comment on as well is that, you know, it's tough being a chairman, I think, of these planning committees. Is there a role that the chairman's, remember the chairman's in charge of the committee, so that perhaps the chairman needs to stop some of the talking that goes on sometimes, where members repeat things. Sometimes that happens, and we might end up with some shorter meetings. So we've got a chair-vice chair meeting coming up when it's in the diary. I think that's something we perhaps need to have a look at.
Okay, thank you for those comments, and they are noted. So the committee notes the progress of the past recommendations. Okay. Oh, sorry. Oh, Councillor Williamson, I apologise. Would you like to come in? Sorry.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry,
thank you for allowing me to sit at home, and I'm still recovering. Just 2 points. Epping Forest is not unique. Many of the other, when we were looking at the PAS review, or before the PAS review, all of our neighbouring authorities do things in exactly the same way, and probably have less meetings. Most of them have less meetings than we still do. But I wanted to raise the point. Councillor Wiskin mentioned about lengths of meetings, I think it was. I've watched, either attended or watched all of the 6 committees. There was one, I'm not going to mention the actual application, there was one on the last committee where it was made clear several times that the discussion that was going on was not about the actual application. The application was quite clear in what it was asking for, and the committee debated, I'd say, at least half an hour on issues outside of that actual application heading. So it's in our own hands, and I think, yeah, we need strong chairs that stop that sort of thing going on. But I think we're definitely moving in the right direction, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I appreciate that.
Yep, thank you for that, Councillor Williamson. Yep. So that is it then. So,
Next slide.
yep, so we can go on to the next item, which is item 10, quarter three outturn and priority projects update, pages 15 to 38. And I'd just like to remind the committee that there is a supplementary agenda item which contains details of the leisure KPI and the Epping Leisure Centre update. For ease, I suggest we take performance report first and then open up to members and then move to the projects. So, so James, will you present the report, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't intend to go through the report kind of line by line. As the Chairman said, if we look at the KPIs that were agreed by Overview and Scrutiny in July 2024, so this report provides the outturn figures for Q3 against KPIs along with the priority projects. Out of the 32 indicators, 3 have been identified as falling within the tolerance range, and 3 require kind of further attention and action and fall within the red RAG status and that. But like I said, rather than go through the report line for line, happy to take any questions in terms of the KPIs. We have kind of officers in the room, hopefully be able to answer any questions, and also online from the service areas.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So now basically I'll open up to questions, comments on the KPIs. We won't take it page by page, but just okay. So,
Councillor Dadd first.
Yep, Councillor Dadd, would you like to go first? Thank you.
Thank you. I actually referring to table 1.6, the section on average relet time in calendar days for measure of void, which is on page 16.
Page 16, thank you for that. So, okay, so
bottom of page 16. And I see that the target is for 42 days, which I think is rather a low target, and we're not reaching that. But also what concerns me is this was brought up at a couple of scrutiny meetings during the year, and when asked at that time, we were told that we're better than some other local authorities. Last time when it was raised, it was, well, we are looking into it. But this particular section, there's no comments or actions of what they're proposing to do. Now, I understand that if somebody dies, there's a sudden thing, but I would assume that there is some notice about people leaving the property and that somebody could go in and do, for want of another word, either inspection or dilapidations to see what needs to be done, so that people are ready to go in straight away. Because any day that is empty, we're losing money. Thank you.
thank you as well. Can I ask John Taphouse, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, of course, thanks. So there are 2 aspects really to the void. There's the bit where the void gets repaired, and then there's the bit where it's where we advertise and let it. So so first of all, on this one, I think the first thing is, in the short term, Q4, it's probably going to stay red, and the reason for that is we've had a couple of long-term voids, which are going to push the average up. But the things that we're doing to help on my side of the business to help reduce that void period is we've just introduced a new relet standard, which Cabinet approved at the end of last year. Previously, the void standard was unclear on the extent of Bristol. Do you want to come in here?
So, John, I'll let you finish first. Sorry,
oh, okay.
Just coming on the housing side. Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, so the previous standard was unclear on the extent of work to the gardens. So we were spending too much time and money on excessive landscaping. We've now made clear that the garden works are limited only to making clear clearing the debris and making it safe. So that will help reduce the time. The other thing we're doing is we are creating a new partner agreement, which is due to be in place in April, and that will replace the current service level agreement. But the new partner agreement will give us much stronger provisions on performance management for voids, so there can be more emphasis on reducing the time that we spend repairing the voids. And also, Councillor Dan is absolutely right. Yeah, we do need to do more work before the property becomes void. So in many cases, we do get the notice period. So we are starting to use that period to discuss the issues with the tenant, and if possible, persuade them that are you sure you want to move? Maybe you could stay here, so it doesn't become a void at all. But also to get us ready and planning so that we can speed up the process. Chris?
Thank you very much. Yeah, and Chris Walsh. Chris Walsh. Yeah, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you for the chair, and thank you, John. So yeah, just to kind of reiterate what John was saying, but obviously just to add a couple of parts to that. Obviously, the figures are slightly misleading in the sense that we've got 3 particular independent living properties that have caused that number to go much higher. So these are kind of independent living schemes that are effectively first floor bed sits. They're quite difficult to let even to people on our supplementary waiting list. We are looking at options for those in terms of piloting temporary accommodation as a possibility and using those for our temporary accommodation needs. In relation to the sort of pre-work now, once we're getting notice, especially where we're getting people into sort of transfer internally, the tenancy team are now working closely with the rehousing team to go and do the tenancy audits prior to a move. So what happens is we're picking up any issues with the property prior to that and ensuring that people are not leaving kind of house loads of items before they leave, which generally causes quite a significant delay, having to kind of clear the contents of a house. Where someone's passed away, it's obviously slightly different, but hopefully with those new procedures put in place, we'll certainly be a bit more robust moving forward.
Thank you for that. And can I go over to Councillor Wiskin, please? Thank you. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. It's regarding item regarding fly tipping, which has seen, sadly, an alarming increase, which is not surprising in some ways, given how difficult it is for people to use the refuse tips. How, I'm not saying obstructive, and I know it's outside of this jurisdiction, but if you go to Luxborough Lane, you could almost eat your dinner off the floor. It's been polished so well and brushed by the guys who man it, but they spend a lot of time asking what getting rid of. If the tips were open up more and you could dispose of stuff, we should be working closer with Essex. I'd like to see some indication that we are trying to lobby them to make better use of the tips and more accessible. I think Councillor Murray mentioned it several months back. To get rid of rubble, you have to go to Harlow, which is nonsense. But there we go.
Thank you. Yeah, just to, it is alarming how much it's gone up, I have to say, and the work of the team, they're working tirelessly. We are working with Essex County Council and the Essex Police and with the Corporation of London. We've just launched an initiative with them it's called Scrap the waste sort of fly tipping campaign. We've had some funding from the PFCC to do some out of hours patrols with our partners, and it runs for 17 weeks, and we've carried out 6 patrols at the moment. We've had some good results from that. Not over 90 vehicles were stopped in terms of identifying unlicensed waste carriers. So we're doing, there's a big education campaign that you'll see on social media. We've developed a leaflet as part of the campaign that will go out to every resident through the council tax bills when they go out. We're sort of like working cross-border with our, say, Brentwood, as a case in point, to look at sharing intelligence and sharing information on trying to capture the offenders. It's a countrywide problem. I think we just have to keep pushing the education and the enforcement as we are.
Thank you. Thank you. And can I go to Councillor McCann, who also like to ask a question?
Yeah, so I think just following on from Councillor Wiskin, really. So this is something that blights my ward of Chigwell Lambourne. Lots of country roads, lots of opportunities for people to fly tip quite large amounts of rubble and house refuse. I think just on the point, I think it's a sound point around the recycling centres, because all in good, we've got the scrap campaign, very commendable. That's around proactive patrols. It's short term, but I do think there's something there around opening a dialogue with Essex County Council to look at the implications of their change to how people take their refuse to the tips. So has there been any analysis with, in conjunction with Essex County Council around when that decision was made, what then happened to fly tipping, and was there any mapping done of the areas where it's affected most? I'd just like to just a follow up specifically around not so much the scrap campaign, which I'm very supportive of, but the direct engagement with the county council around the recycling centres, and whether or not that's subject to any kind of review. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, certainly, Councillor McKenna, I can pick that up outside of this and we can speak with our counterparts at Essex County Council. I've not seen anything around it that they're going to consider to review it, but it's certainly something we can pick up and discuss through the working group that we've got going.
Thank you.
Thank you as well for that response. Councillor Lyons.
Thank you, Chairman. Picking up on Councillor McCann's comments, there's an awful lot of fly tipping going on, and it has increased, the visibility has increased, particularly around Chigwell. And the issues that I'm picking up is that most of the roads where it's dumped on have unlit roads, so there's no street lights and there's no power. So the big issue, and I've raised this a number of times, is can we not put cameras at either end and then catch people? And I think the answer is no, because you've got to actually see people dumping it, or but again, that is the most difficult area. But we do need to do something about those areas where there are unlit streets, and it is getting worse. And I agree with Councillor McCann about Essex County Council. We know that the Chigwell tip is closed 2 days a week. You have to make a booking, and we don't take trade waste. So it is making it even more difficult for anybody that wants to dump things. And I know that Redbridge do have a facility where you can take most things there. Okay, they close at 4 o'clock, but they do have that more open facility. And I think we need to look at the costs of our collection costs. We're having to deal with the after effects rather than prevention. If we can make those tips open a lot more for a lot longer, I'm sure that's going to improve the situation for our residents.
Thank you. Yeah, if you'd like to come back.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Lyon. As part of the funding that we've received, we have purchased some equipment so we can do some monitoring of hotspot areas where there is limited lighting or no lighting. I won't particularly want to go into too many details on that, obviously, because I don't want to give the game away, if you like. But yes, there is some plans afoot to monitor those locations.
Thank you. Councillor Rackham.
Thank you, Chair. It's back to fly tipping. I know that all my colleagues here are probably having the same problems, but a lot of my casework now is regarding fly tipping and the horrendous amount that we're now having to deal with. I think Councillor Lyon has got a very good point. I think lighting would help, because I do think it will deter people from throwing, their refuge wherever they decide they want to. I'm finding with my residents that they're actually quite disheartened and getting quite scared because they're walking down the road and there is so much fly tipping everywhere. So it is really affecting people's lives in a way. So what I wanted to ask you is, what happens after this finishes? After the 17 weeks, where do we go with this initiative? And also, how is it being advertised? Because a lot of residents are saying to me that, you know, they're finding it very difficult to go and report it on the site. So I wondered whether this initiative comes with another email address or another contact that they can actually go to directly and they feel that they're being listened to. Because I'm getting a lot of residents coming to me and saying, yeah, you're not doing anything about it, it's still here 2 weeks later, and these people are getting away with it. And that's how my residents are feeling. So if you could fill me in, that'd be...
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. So to report fly tipping, they can do it through the website. It's the normal reporting way. What I can do is I can ask the team manager for the environmental enforcement team to make contact with you, and he can then you can have a discussion around the different methods that we can use.
Councillor Lyon, thank you. Councillor Lyon.
Sorry, just to come back on something. While I was out yesterday, I happened to come across some of the TVS guys litter picking. They were doing a brilliant job, and commend them. You know, in their bright orange uniforms, they really were doing well. But I stopped to thank them. But I also asked them whether they could deal with the fly tipping that was along the route that they were taking. And they said they can take pictures and report it, but they didn't have the facilities to actually collect it. So I think that, I don't know whether there's anything we can do about giving them more capability to actually deal with that sort of stuff as they're actually going out litter picking. But I'll leave that as an ongoing question.
Yeah, it's certainly an area that I think we spoke about before and we can explore. I think the issue is, at the moment, as a way to try and prevent the fly tipping, is the fly tip needs to be investigated for evidence and that. So at the moment, the TVS operatives, they haven't got that authority or the training to investigate and that. So it comes kind of via Mandy's team and then passed on to the waste team for then TVS to clear. But it's certainly an area if we can look to try and kind of speed up that process and look at that, so we can explore.
Thank you, yeah. Councillor Lucas, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just looking at a different area of this table that's in front of us this evening, the total value of sundry debt outstanding over 60 days old is an area that is red, that has been red through all 3 quarters of 2024. The goal is ensure income is collected. Well, it shows, you know, you can see that it's progressively getting worse. There's no comments or corrective actions within the table, and I'd just like to know what's going to be done about that, please.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, apologies, I'm no expert on this, and we haven't got anyone from kind of finance tonight, but or Revs and Bens, but I did speak to Rob Pavey regarding this today, and he assured me that there is a plan of action across the council that to address this. But what I can do is to get more information and send that out.
Yeah, thank you for that. Sorry. I think
first got Janet Whitehouse.
Oh, sorry. Can I go to Councillor Janet Whitehouse, please?
Thank you, Chairman. The item I want to speak about is page 22, item 7, about the Ombudsman complaints. The item talks about the number of upheld complaints, but it doesn't say anything about the outcome from those complaints. We used to have that reported in the members' bulletin along with complaints that had come in, and I would like to see that done again, but that's not what I wasn't to ask about. I had a discussion with the previous complaints officer about the process of Ombudsman complaints, and he said that when the Ombudsman makes a recommendation, it gets handed back to the service department, but there doesn't seem to be any monitoring to see whether that is actually carried out, and I think we need to have a KPI on the outcomes of these complaints. But to give an appalling example, in March 2023, a tenant in my ward was told, recommended by the Ombudsman, that she had CCTV and a camera, CCTV and a fence supplied. We're now nearly 2 years after that recommendation and she still hasn't got it. She's asked about it, I've raised it, and that recommendation hasn't been carried out. And nobody seems to be monitoring to see that it is carried out. So I would like a different KPI that talks about looking at the outcomes from the recommendations. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Jen Gould come back on that, please. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So just to respond to that, if I may, the recommendations from the Ombudsman are just that. They are recommendations which we take back into the services and determine whether they are reasonable and doable. I don't know, obviously, about this specific case that Councillor Whitehouse mentions, but if she wants to email me the details, I'm very happy to look at it. We do have a list, though, of Ombudsman recommendations, and they are monitored through the complaints officer. So we do that internally. We can certainly, though, share that in the members' bulletin if that's not already happening. So I can take that action away and we can get that shared in the member bulletin as on a regular basis as we go through.
Okay, thank you very much for that reply. And now can go to Councillor John Whitehouse, please.
Thanks, Chairman. Yes, Councillor Lucas asked half my question about the sundry debtors, but can I ask, when Mr Warwick circulates the response, he also explains the 75% improvement on Q1 sort of metric. I mean, if Q1 is a baseline, it's odd that Q1 is red. On the other hand, 75% every quarter seems a massive leap to take. And perhaps it's just a sort of shortcut for something that makes more sense when it's fully explained, but I don't think it's going to mean much unless we get the explanation as well. Thanks.
Thank you, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I will do, yeah.
Oh, good, yeah. Councillor Morris, please, can you ask your question?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just to go back on the sundry debt, I think it would also be helpful to get the information on how much of that goes to default, because the numbers seem quite significant if you look at what we discussed on the budget in the last meetings. That'd be a useful piece of information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we can note that. Thank you. If there are no more questions, if there are no other questions on the KPIs, could we move on to the priority projects? Okay, the priority projects are on. It's okay, page 18, section 2 there. There's four of them: Epping Leisure Centre, the Waste Programme, Fit for Future portfolio, the Broadway refurbishment. The Epping Leisure Centre one is on the supplementary. Is that right? It's on the supplementary. So, do I go over to you, James? And,
yeah, you can do. I am conscious of time, so members, you've got the information again, like the KPIs. Happy to take any questions that anyone may have on the 4 priority projects.
Yeah, so just opening up to the committee on the priority projects.
See any questions?
No? I have a question if nobody else has a question, which is on the which is about Fit for the Future. That as we move towards LGR, which is a very priority for us, I just wondered how we will need to amend, adapt the Fit for the Future programme, because obviously that was that project was put together before the advent of LGR. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And Chairman, of course, as you heard in the budget last week, some of the tweaking around the budget was around the transformation pot we put aside, because obviously now transformation and Fit for the Future will be very different to what we first envisaged. And at the moment, it's hard to make some of those decisions where to invest. But of course, transformation covers a whole range of areas from technology through to processes, through to shared working. Some of the shared working pieces we've put on hold because it's working out who your natural partners are. But later on here this evening, you've got an item on procurement. But again, I see that as transformation as well because it changes the processes to streamline and make them work better. But if we're being honest, at the present time, with LGR going on, transformation is, a bit of, you've got to look at as things progress, and we're in the very early stages.
Yes, I am.
So, but it will, impact and move forward.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any other questions or comments about the priority projects? James, did you want to update us all about the one about the Broadway one? Sorry.
John is still on line with the best place.
John, did you want to update us about the Broadway at all? Broadway refurbishment?
The report. It's very early days. It just started last month, and so the scaffold they're doing scaffolding's up on both sides of the road. We're doing it in a third to minimise the time that scaffolding's up in any part of the building. So far, it's scaffolding put up, surveys of the windows measured, windows have been made, but the actual works themselves haven't started yet. So we'll see. So far, so good. We've run we're available every Monday morning in the Barrington Hall, and a few people come in, but not many people. So far, we haven't really had anyone sort of complaining about the works or any issues. But it's a long project. The main part of the works are still to start, so we'll see how it goes. But early days yet.
Okay. Yep. Thank you for that. If there are no other, Councillor Lyon.
Sorry, just a quick one, Chairman. Under that project, Broadway refurbishment, it shows RAG status as green, but it also has in words amber. So is it green or is it amber?
I just spotted that as well. I would say it was green. I know the project manager put two lists down as amber, but I think it's being quite harsh. One on the resident satisfaction and the other one on commercial tenant satisfaction. But they haven't. On a project like this, it's difficult to live through. So we're going to get that. But I'll get that confirmed. But I think I would call it a green.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
I just want to confirm my reading of the report. It's true that there are no risks associated with the budget position at the moment?
Well, the cost overrun is green. There is an issue that we're looking at about the roof because they might need a bit of redesign from the original one. But we're looking at ways to make sure that we deal with that issue without any and keep it within budget. So there are always going to be variations during the project, but it's pretty tightly scoped out. But it's something we've got to keep an eye on and keep under control.
Okay, thank you. If there are no more comments or questions on item 10, then perhaps we can move on to agenda item 11. And agenda item 11 is the Essex Procurement Partnership Government Papers Approval and Adoption. These are pages 39 to 135.
Sorry, Chairman, I do apologise. I need to declare an interest on this particular item as the Cabinet Member at Essex County Council, so I will absent myself from the Chamber.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, we're good. Okay, so can I go to Can I go to Shane McMahon, who will present the procurement report to the committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everyone. So just an overview of this, really. It's an existing arrangement we've had with something called the Essex Procurement Hub. I think we've been in that since 2006, so it's a long-running thing we've had with Braintree and Castle Point also being members of that. That's now combining with Essex County Council. They were also working with tendering, so it's a few of us into that partnership now. It's been rebranded as the Essex Procurement Partnership. The idea is that we'll work collaboratively, all the partners. Essex are going to be the accountable body for the partnership. The obvious benefits was that there'll be an increased resilience for us by working together. We'll have greater access to other types of procurement expertise across those councils. Hopefully we'll reduce duplication of some of the processes that we're all doing, and by forward planning and working together on procurement, we're hoping to find some savings too. What we're asking for is the draft collaboration agreement, which is in the report, is almost final but not yet. So we're asking for to delegate authority to James Warwick as the service director for that area, so that prior to April we will sign that. In the report also there is the procurement strategy that we're going to work together on, and the social value policy as well. The other thing that is in the report is the EFDC procurement rules. We had to make some minor changes to those around the thresholds to make sure that we aligned with all of the partners, and there was a couple of audit recommendations that we had to make as well, along with legislation changes, because the Procurement Act of 2023 came in this week. So any legislation references to Public Contract Regs 2015 had to be changed. So just a few minor changes there to make sure that we're all aligned with everybody in the partnership. So I think that's a summary of it, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yep, thank you for that. And then I'll open to the committee for questions or comments. So Councillor Lyon, please.
Thank you, Chairman. One thing that I was interested in, does this actually generate a preferred suppliers list? And if so, how is that communicated not only within the district and through county, but perhaps to town and parish councils that might actually want to use some sort of common process?
Thank you, Councillor. No, it doesn't. What would happen is that for any particular project or requirement, it would be assessed at that time. So what we try to do as often as possible is to advertise them openly. And there's probably a piece of work there around making sure that that advertisement itself is advertised, if that makes sense, to make sure that people know that we are advertising them and where we're advertising them. Part of the new Procurement Act is that there's a central digital platform where not just ours but all public bodies' requirements and notices will be published. So that's where we would signpost people to, and I'm happy to share those details separately to this to anybody who would need to see them.
Thank you. Can I go over to Councillor Barnard, please?
Thank you. I'm just looking through to page 59, where there's highlighted areas about liabilities. I guess you couldn't come up with a figure here, but could you give us a vague indication of what the liability to the council might be?
Thank you, Councillor. At this point, I couldn't, but we do have some contracts officers within my team who are reviewing this and would be able to obviously advise on what that figure that's not in there and highlighted might look like, but I'm afraid I don't know that offhand. Apologies.
Okay, thank you. If there are any more comments or questions from the committees, I can open it up to other councillors. Councillor John Whitehouse, please.
Yeah, there are two things I wanted to ask about, if that's all right. First of all, obviously lots made here about the social value aspects of the procurement, and there's an appendix which goes into that in more detail. I wasn't quite clear on whether the measures that are set out, I get the point that the social value needs to be measurable and not just good intentions. Are the measures set out in the annex a menu from which suppliers are meant to pick? Are they examples, and suppliers, can be, empowered to sort of create their own similar measures as long as they're delivering, the same priorities and the same themes? To clarify that, that'd be helpful. And the financial arrangements, I see there's sort of fixed costs, set out in another of the appendices. Again, I wasn't clear is that our financial contribution, or is there also a sort of variable element, whereas we're charged a percentage of contract value or something for each contract awarded?
Thank you, Councillor. So regarding social value, those that you see listed are what we call TOMs, themes, outcomes, measures. So they are agreed across, I think, first nationally, and then the partnership have also had a look and tried to agree on a standard set. But we wouldn't ask the suppliers to pick. What we would do is, depending on the type of procurement that we're doing, we would select the ones that we feel are most relevant to that project and try to focus on those and ask for social value to be developed towards those things. So it would be project based and specific to each project. Regarding the finances, there is a fixed cost in there that you will have seen. That is the cost as such. What there is outside of this, which isn't listed, is the model of the procurement hub and the procurement partnership is that they create framework agreements that are nationally available to all public bodies. When they are used, the hub or the partnership get a rebate back from that, and that offsets against everybody's subscriptions. So in the time that we have been a member, there have been several years where we haven't paid anything because the rebates have been substantial enough that they've covered it all. At the moment, I think the last few years it's been at around 30,000, and there's enough money in the reserves, I believe, to ensure that it does not go above that for several years. So we did question this with them as well, because obviously the number in there is a little bit higher than 30, but obviously officially that is the cost. But we've yet to pay that in the time since 2006, and we're not expecting that to change.
Can I just come back on the measures? So there's no scope for a company to say, we've got this really good experience elsewhere of delivering, I don't know, social value, and we'll put it into the pot. They've got to, even before that stage, the procurers basically say, this is what you've got to deliver. It just seems that we're sort of potentially missing out on opportunities if we're not allowing any innovation on the way of suppliers.
No, that's a fair point. And I think a big part of the new Procurement Act is actually around early engagement. So a big part of that is that we're expected to go and speak to those suppliers and ask them what they think they can deliver, not just obviously social value, but the project itself, to help inform specifications and inform what we should be going out to try to do. So I think that dialogue is a big part of that. As you've said, we don't want to assume that we're the experts of everything and tell them what we want, without making sure it's something that's possible, or that we're not missing out on any innovations that may be out there. So yes, that's a fair point. We are trying to make sure that we engage with the market prior to putting out things like that, so that we can find these things that we may have missed otherwise.
Thank you. Yep. I'd like to ask a question myself, if I may, which is about the procurement procedures for SMEs. I know that small companies would like to bid for public sector contracts, and I think some of them, they find it difficult and sometimes expensive to meet all the compliance requirements. Being local authorities, they are quite a long list of compliance requirements. And I just wondered, I don't know very much about the procurement hub or the partnership, but I would be very pleased if it could be a fairly streamlined, not necessarily simple, but streamlined, and so that we could aid SMEs as much as we can to submit bids for public sector contracts. So if you could comment on that, I'd be pleased. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, no, that's a fair point. The new Procurement Act, as I said, one of the main drivers of that was to make it more accessible to SMEs as well. Having that central digital platform that I mentioned earlier means that all the opportunities will be in one place. So that's somewhere that we can advise people to search, obviously not just for Epping Forest opportunities, but wider than that. The process itself of procurement, the way that they've tried to make it easier is that when people do bid for public contracts, some of those things that they may have to provide, things like their, accounts and finances and all things like this, rather than having to provide them every time they tender, they would only have to provide them if they're successful. Obviously, so rather than getting everybody who bids to give us all of that information, we would go through on the assumption there's a few questions they may have to tick, a few preset boxes to say, yes, we can provide those if needed, if successful, and then they would provide them at the end. So we're trying to reduce the burden on suppliers to be able to take part. So, and we'll work as a partnership as well. Obviously, any ideas that other councils in the partnership have got, we'll all try to find the best way to do that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's a good answer. Yeah. So, if there are any other questions or comments at all, you can. Right. So the comments have been noted. Let me just see on here. Right. Can we agree to commend this report to Cabinet? Thank you. Okay. So now we can move on to item 12, which is pages 136 to 147. And that is the Epping Forest District Antisocial Behaviour Policy. And I'm awfully sorry, Councillor Kesker.
No problem at all. You're going to hear more of me tonight. I've got 3 items, so let me just start. Antisocial behaviour policy. The proposal is to introduce an ASB policy to ensure we have a policy in place covering investigation of ASB. Currently, we have a comprehensive set of procedures that encompass policy, but we need a separate policy in place. This policy defines our approach to the management and investigation of antisocial behaviour complaints that the Council receive. It provides clear guidance on responsibilities and expectations for victims of antisocial behaviour within the district. There is a requirement under Section 218A of the Housing Act 1996 to publish our ASB policy. The policy is district-wide and will encompass all housing tenures, privately owned, private rent and social housing. And I'm pleased to say that Melissa Foe, the team manager of our ASB team, is here to answer any questions.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Yeah, Melissa, would you like to... Oh, you're going to... Sorry, we need questions first, don't we? Is that right? So, I'm sorry. I was jumping the gun there, but so enthusiastic. Right, sorry. Councillor Gad, yeah. Good.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this is really worthwhile work that EFDC have been doing, as also shown in the Safer Streets projects in Paternoster Ward and at Oakwood Hill. I've got a couple of questions relating to this. I'm quite concerned about what's going on in my own ward in Shelley, and what I have found is that EFDC have some information, the police have other information, and I'm wondering, in this policy you're talking about partners, whether you could elaborate a bit more on the partnership and how you can actually perhaps collaborate the work so we have a full picture. The second part of that is, I understand that you intend to do some mapping as well, which would be really welcome. And how will that be reviewed to concentrate on black spot areas? Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, would you like to come back on that?
Thank you, Councillor. So in terms of the partnerships under the Crime and Disorder Act 1998, we have a responsibility to work with our partners. So mainly for antisocial behaviour, our partners are Essex Police. We hold a local action group, which is every 6 weeks, where we have Essex Police attend, we have social care attend, Open Road, Phoenix Futures, all of our statutory partners as well as voluntary partners, and we discuss antisocial behaviour cases that are coming on our radar jointly. We also discuss hotspot areas, so if we district-wide, if there's any areas which are coming up on each other's radars for the organisations, then we discuss those and put a partnership plan in place to address the antisocial behaviour. Does that answer that part of the question?
Yeah, please come back, please.
Sorry, if I can just come back on that. Is it possible to have the details of who the partners are and when your meetings are, and is it possible for councillors to provide information to that meeting? Thank you.
Yeah, I can certainly let you know when the meetings are. They're every 6 weeks. Unfortunately, they are for just professionals, so only partners can attend due to the confidentiality of the cases that we're discussing. But you're more than welcome to feed into them. So if you have hotspot areas that you would like us to discuss, then we can certainly do that. That's no problem. And then on your second question, so the mapping, so we are looking at, with the Police Fire Crime Commissioner, they're doing an Essex-wide programme at the moment, looking at antisocial behaviour, and it's a really complex project because they're looking to integrate local authority data with Essex Police data, and every local authority records things differently, uses different systems, as does Essex Police. So trying to integrate that, that's a project that Nottingham Trent University are currently working on, and is really similar to the project that we did with Minerva, which is our Violence Against Women and Girls project. So hopefully in the future, we will be able to, in the not too distant future, be able to look at those hotspot areas, but at the moment we don't have a facility where we share systems. We have very separate systems. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lyon, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Chairman. A great report and really useful piece of information. A couple of questions. I mean, maybe best not to answer the details, but do we actually map ASB across the district, and do we know if there are any particular hotspots within the district? And also, can you make sure that ward councillors are kept informed of those sort of issues that are raised, so that should any resident come back to a ward councillor asking those sorts of questions, we know what's going on? I think the liaison with ward councillors would be very useful.
Thank you. So we do, with the current system that we use at the moment for our case management system, we can search on areas where antisocial behaviour reports are. When we talk about antisocial behaviour reports, majority of them are residential neighbour disputes, but we also do get the public place antisocial behaviour reports as well. We are looking to go over to a new system, which will be able to map our hotspots for us. So it's a much more sophisticated system that we currently have. So hopefully we will have that facility and capability to look at a map in a better picture with the new system. In terms of letting ward councillors know, the only yes, that's fine. I think if there's an influx or there's a number of reports in an area, then we would reach out to you. But the number of reports that we get daily, I don't know if that would be something that we commit to, can commit to, especially when it's residential antisocial behaviour complaints. But were you thinking more on like public place antisocial behaviour or both? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, please come back.
Just to come back on that, because sort of the experience of I've had is sort of neighbour disputes, and they come back to the councillors to say, can you help us out? My neighbour's done this, that and the other, and you end up piggy in the middle, which I don't think is a very good idea. But if we have a structure in place that can deal with that, and we know before they contact us, we have at least a bit of information, or if we have a channel to actually make sure that we're briefed on these things, that would be really helpful.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Yes, I can certainly look into that. I think, as I said, the number of complaints that we do get, I wouldn't be able to commit to be able to letting everyone know with all the complaints we get. But I would say if you are getting contacted by residents, please feel free to reach out to me or the Safer Communities email address, and we can come back to you and give you advice on where we are with cases.
Thank you. Councillor Rackham, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I do really welcome this. On antisocial behaviour, can you just give me sort of like a timescale of when something's reported to when you may issue a fixed penalty, and who would do that, and do we have the staffing available, especially out of hours? Thank you.
Thank you. So our service level agreement is we respond to victims within 3 working days. So we make contact with the victim and explain our process and investigation procedure to them. We then send out diary sheets because we have to assess the impact of the behaviour before we can look at any enforcement. So once those diary sheets are returned, we then will go out to witness anything, use noise equipment, use different methods to gather our evidence, and at that point we would issue a community protection warning. If that's breached, then it goes to community protection notice. If that's breached, that's when your fixed penalty notice comes in. And sorry, your second point of the question.
Funding. Do we have the funding to send out officers, or who are we going to send out to sort of get intel on it?
Thank you. Yes. So out of hours, so we have we do have our dedicated antisocial behaviour team. We have 3 community safety investigators that do investigate antisocial behaviour complaints. Predominantly, their work is Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. But we understand antisocial behaviour doesn't happen Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So there is capacity to use overtime if the visits are out of hours. We've previously also used our police funded team to carry out those visits for us as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, over to Councillor Lucas, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, the last point of the comments there was my question. Is there any implication of not having the in-house policing team to implement in this policy? And do we have provisions in place for the work that they potentially would have helped us with? Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think there's implications in terms of the actual policy. This is a policy that we can enforce with our officers and our staff. It would just mean being a bit more creative with the out of hours work and making sure our officers are working out of hours to witness any antisocial behaviour that is reported to us.
Thank you. Councillor Dadd, can I go over to you?
Thank you, if I may. Just wanted to ask whether there's much crossover between antisocial behaviour and some of the other minor crimes to do with, things like a theft from vehicles or that sort of behaviour, or vandalism, which might be considered as a more serious crime than just antisocial behaviour. And do you get feedback, and do you have a lot of communication with the police about that?
So in terms of whether there's a connection between the two, reports that are reported to us are low-level antisocial behaviour, so I wouldn't necessarily be privy to theft of vehicles or theft generally or vandalism, that sort of thing. But we do have regular meetings with the police. Every Monday morning we have a briefing with the police to see what has come up on their radar and vice versa, so that there's very open communication with them.
Thank you. Can I go over now to Councillor Janet Whitehouse, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I welcome this report. I think it's very helpful. And I'm just wondering how long the local action group has been going and how long we have been able to refer issues to it, because it's just the place that I've needed to know about and which I either didn't know about or had forgotten about, because in the definition of antisocial behaviour, it says on page 144, conduct that has caused or is likely to cause harassment, alarm or distress to any person. And I have a resident in my ward that fits absolutely. So I will be referring it. But I could have done this months and months and months ago had I known that this avenue was open to me. So I'm very glad to be here and read this know about this report. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll have some good news. Yeah, is there any more? Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, could I just come back to
Yes,
Councillor Whitehouse, if that's okay? Yeah, that's absolutely fine to let us know about a resident, and also I would welcome that, so I can get a community safety investigator to speak to them about their options. In terms of the local action group and referral, the referrals are for professionals, but I'm more than happy to speak to you and about it, and especially around hotspot areas. If it's a neighbour dispute, we need to go down the right channels, but more hotspot areas than that can be referred in. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Morris, please.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, could I just ask a bit, the section on communication, section 8 in the policy, it says, where appropriate, we'll undertake campaigns to raise public awareness of their responsibilities. Could you give a bit more colour about when it would be appropriate? Just to understand that a bit better. Thank you.
Yes, of course. So every year we have like an antisocial behaviour awareness week, which is a national campaign. So in terms of communication during that week, we would be putting out messages in terms of how to report antisocial behaviour, what that looks like, how to raise an antisocial behaviour case review, so your case can be reviewed if you're not satisfied. So we would also publish communication if we've taken a case to court and we've been successful in a prosecution, and we would publish that just so people are aware what powers we have as a local authority, because I think sometimes people aren't aware, so it's really good to get those messages out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there are no more questions or comments, then can the committee, can we agree to commend this antisocial behaviour policy to Cabinet, and that is with the inclusion of the comments from tonight's meeting? Agreed, thank you. Okay. Right, so we can then move on to item 13. Item 13, which is on page 148. And that is the smoke control area review.
Yes, and Councillor Keska.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Keska. I'll keep forgetting. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. This report on the smoke control area sets out 4 options for the Council to consider. The government's air quality strategy prioritises the reduction of pollution from domestic burning through smoke control areas and use of cleaner fuels. The strategy clearly states the government's expectation is that local authorities use their powers to reduce PM 2.5 and that all councils should support the delivery of national PM 2.5 targets by taking action to reduce emissions from sources within their control. EFDC has had smoke control areas in place since the 1960s. However, changes brought in by the Environment Act 2021 have necessitated changes to enforcement with the introduction of FPN notices to enable enforcement action to be taken if needed in the future. It is also appropriate to review the smoke control areas to make them fit for the future. The current smoke control areas do not offer consistent protection to the health of our residents across the urban areas of the district. This legislation does not prevent the use of burners or fireplaces, but ensures the adoption of cleaner burning methods, which should reduce the creation of PM 2.5 pollution and therefore minimise harm to human health. Reviewing our smoke control areas and adopting these recommendations will also show our commitment to climate change agenda. We have with us tonight in the chamber Brian Stalabas, Team Manager of Environmental Health, and on Teams Claire Jagger, Air Quality Officer. So they will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that. And yeah, okay, would the committee make any questions or comments? Councillor Barnard, over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chairman, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so we've got 4 different options, but the last one, expand the area of the district that's designated as a smoke control area. I haven't seen any indication of what that might. It's a blank sheet of paper. I mean, it might be the whole borough. What have you got any indication as to what area, what that expansion might consist of, where it might cover?
Thank you for that. Brian Stella, you'll come back.
Yeah, the recommendation is to cover the urban areas and not the whole of the district. So you're looking at the urban areas at the moment. A large portion of Waltham Abbey is covered by a number of different smoke control areas which came in at different times, and a part of Loughton in the report it shows a part of that. So the anticipation is that we will cover the urban areas and not the rural parts of the district.
Sorry, you say by urban areas, do you mean Epping? Do you mean Buckhurst Hill? Could you name the Ongar.
Yeah, we would be classing those as the urban areas. Yeah. So so we would be classing those as the urban areas. Yes.
Yep. Can I go to Councillor Dan, please? Thank
I don't think that Ongar is an urban area, actually.
Okay. Yeah. Councillor Wiskin.
Can we have some indication about what the process is currently, just for my peace of mind, in terms of what happens if somebody's currently in an area which is covered, it breaches the smoke control regulations? What is the process now, and is there reading about a fixed penalty notice? Is there any change on when that's implemented? Is there a warning in front of it, etc.?
Claire, do you want to take that or answer that?
Yeah, sure, I can take that. The process has been up until now that we will go and witness a problem, and then we would obviously speak to the person who's creating the smoke and offer them advice, and we would work with them to try and improve the situation. If they were unable to do the relevant required improvements to stop the smoke, we used to have to serve an enforcement notice, which if it was breached would then go to a magistrate's court. The change in the legislation has meant that we are to serve fixed penalty notices instead. We would still offer the advice and work with them before any warning letter was issued, and a warning letter would then be issued prior to fixed penalty notice. We have an enforcement policy that requires stepped and proportionate action, so it wouldn't come as any surprise to anybody by the time a fixed penalty notice would be issued.
Thank you. Can I go over to Councillor Lucas, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I couldn't not comment on this because it's something that actually impacts my home address. With a lot of burning that takes place in a particular site that is actually included on the local plan, that is not actually currently included in the Waltham Abbey designated existing smoke control area. However, that particular site would become a very urban area. So it's something that I would like to be particularly, I assume that when that takes place, the burning that's taking place currently will stop because it won't be so open and the burning to take place. But my particular comments to them would be, you know, if we designate specific areas now with the changes with the local plan and significant plan development in the future, would that incorporate those areas? I don't know how it would be managed if it was for the whole of the district. I think that you clarified that it wouldn't be the whole of the district, it would just be urban areas, but still that's a large amount of areas to cover with the amount of officers that we've got and the amount of time that would take. So I think that whilst this is a really good report and something that we definitely do need to review, I think it's going to take some time to review to make sure that we get it right so that we can actually enforce it correctly.
Thank you for that. Can I go to... Oh, sorry, did you want to come back on the question at all? Yeah, for Bryce Stella-Brass.
Yeah, I think one of the options in there is to actually include, in the report it says about including the whole of the district, but it was considered to be probably disproportionate to those people that can't access other fuels. So that's the reason why it was kept turned down to the urban areas. But if you wanted to expand it to all of it, then that's a member's decision. These are just the suggestions and options. And yes, it is something to consider about as a local plan. It develops how they would incorporate it. If you did make it the whole of the district, then any development in there would automatically be covered rather than having to revisit it each time and redesignate it.
Thank you. Can I go over to Councillor Rackham, please? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question for Claire. Claire, if people are suffering from financial hardship and they're faced with a penalty, can you tell me if there'll be any help for those people? that could be in that situation, please?
It's not something I would know about, to be quite honest. We would speak to them beforehand and discuss the issues of causing the smoke and see if we could work out what the problem, why the problem was there. Were they using the wrong fuels? Were the fuels damp, for instance, or were they contaminated? Financial hardship, I'm afraid, is something that I would have to look into at the time, should it occur.
Thank you.
We do actually, at the moment, I mean, there's only a handful of complaints that we get each year, and this enforcement would be complaint-led. So I'm not anticipating very large amounts of cases to investigate, to be quite honest with you.
Thank you. Can I go over to Councillor Barnard, please?
Sorry, thank you. I've just reread this following some comments. Does this actually include bonfires?
No, it doesn't. This is purely smoke from chimneys, from properties, either houses, commercial, or some sheds and gardens, for instance. Any building with a roof that has a chimney coming through it is covered by this legislation. Bonfires, building sites and things like that are covered by nuisance legislation, which still is enforced by a magistrate's court.
Thank you. Can I go over to Councillor George, please?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I just want to come back to other options for action. I'll get my words out in a second. Point 4, we've expanded the area. What is the percentage now, and what will the percentage be? So what's the increase in percentage that you would classify as urban? Thank you.
I don't actually know the percentage covered. We have it's broken down into a couple of areas in Loughton, which are next door to one another. Covers, I would say, possibly a quarter of Loughton, maybe a bit more. And the other area is in Waltham Abbey, and that's probably about half of Waltham Abbey. This all happened before I started working at the council, and it looked to me like they were taking small areas and gradually working through them to cover more and more of the district. But then the project ran out of steam, maybe, because there were some areas that it just doesn't look logical at the moment. There's holes in the areas covered. So we do need to make sure that everybody has an equal protection to human health from the PM 2.5s that get out in smoke from these fires.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehouse, please. John Whitehouse.
Thanks, Chairman. It seems amazing that these haven't been looked at for between 60 and 40 years, so well done to whoever decided that it was time to rationalise this stuff. The data I'm surprised to see not included in the report is actually any information about how bad the problem is in the district and where it's worst, because it seems to me that the imposition of a smoke control zone should be correlated with where the particulates have the most impact or are worst. Either the impact on humans, which probably is, as we've heard, the most urban areas, but that's going to depend on the generation of particulates, or, for example, Epping Forest, which is a SAC, and we know we monitor quite carefully pollution from cars, but less so from sources such as chimneys. I looked at the Air Quality Action Zone plan, and that does actually set out geographically which area of the district are most impacted by particulate pollution, although weirdly it seems to use ward boundaries, and I can't quite understand how that can be a natural boundary for air pollution, but anyway, it does use ward boundaries. But it seems to me, if we're looking for the expansion of smoke control areas, and I think there is a case, given the impact we know that particulates have, even at low levels, on both the forest and on human health, which takes as a starting point, those areas identified by air pollution monitoring as being most affected, and where the effect is marginal minimal, there's not a need for smoke control areas. And perhaps that's such an obvious link, it doesn't need stating, but it's not really evident in the report that that's how the areas will be evaluated or calculated?
We don't actually undertake PM 2.5 monitoring in the district. PM 2.5 is a background pollutant that obviously it's transboundary, so it covers wide areas, and a lot of the PM 2.5 pollution that is in this country comes from things like sea salt, for instance, and a lot of it comes over from Europe. So it's not all generated locally, but however, you do have PM 2.5s being generated from chimney smoke, and obviously the concentration is going to be a lot greater near the source, the generation of the smoke. So that's why urban areas are the better place for these smoke control areas, because that's where this is generated. And as you get further away from the urban areas, then obviously it dissolves or is dissipated a bit through the environment. So that's why we need to have the smoke control areas covering the urban areas, because not only is that the greater source, but it's also a more concentrated receptor, so where it could do more harm.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thanks for that. So when in the Air Quality Action Plan, it talks about districts which are of high vulnerability, and it includes areas like Passingford and Lambourne and Chigwell Row and Haytham, Matching and Shearing Village. What does it mean?
Honestly, I didn't write that report, but I presume that could be areas where there's schools for children, there may be hospitals, there may be old people's homes, and any place where there's a concentration of residents is going to be an area where you've got vulnerable people. They could be a receptor to the pollution.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lyon, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Interesting report, and just trying to be clear on what it is that you're asking. It says options for change, and we're asked to actually come up with one of those 4 options. Is that what's being suggested? And if that is the case, just thinking about narrowing it down, and I think option 2 seems unreasonable. To revoke all the current designations seems unreasonable. You know, that's going to make things worse. And certainly the existing scheme doesn't seem to cover what is happening. And I pick up on Councillor Whitehouse's point about where the hotspots are is an important issue. So thinking about this, then either we look at declaring the entire district as smoke-controlled area, or expand the district, expand the area. But I'd like to be clear on what is being asked of us tonight.
We did recommend just the expansion of the smoke control areas, because having contacted neighbouring authorities in Essex, it appeared that whilst some in the south of Essex have got patchy smoke control areas, a lot of the authorities to the north of us, where they're more rural, don't have smoke control areas as yet, and weren't as far down the process as we are in the review. So we didn't want to be too heavy-handed with the rural side parts of our district, but we did want to protect those people that were going to be exposed to the greater concentrations of pollution.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wiskin.
Can I just clarify, this is subject to public consultation, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
That's correct, yeah.
And Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. Yeah, just some additional points looking at the options that we've got. It would kind of make sense to me, looking at exactly what was just said, contacting local authorities. It's kind of annoying that we've got some that are designated their entire area, and then we've got some neighbouring authorities that have chosen to designate parts. And then we've got cross-boundary issues. So it's quite difficult for us to implement something that's going to sort of tick all boxes. There doesn't seem to be any option that seems to be the right one as such when we're looking at the options. They've all got pros and they've all got cons. But my particular preference would probably be actually to implement it across the whole of the district, because I think that when we're talking about it's not going to be the people that are not going to be complaining about it in our more rural areas, so they're not going to be implicated by it anyway. And it's going to be something that's going to be more impacted in the urban areas. And I just think it makes sense for sort of monitoring it, that it's just everywhere, and then it's fair, as it says here, level playing field for all residents. Just seems makes sense to me. And in terms of the costs for enforcement, I do think it makes sense as well to have a harsher cost for subsequent offences, but then again, if it makes it easier for officers to just be, giving out fines for every time that something's come through, would it be that a change of owner was a different subsequent offender, etc., etc.? If we just have a standard fee for when something like this is dealt with, then that might be easier as well. So I would say actually maybe keep the first offence and subsequent offences the same. I'd have concerns of what another councillor mentioned earlier about it. Obviously, we may have some residents that would find it difficult to pay for the offences, but also this is in a particular area like ours. I think this is a significant offence, and £300 in this day and age doesn't, although it's a large amount of money, I think it would seem appropriate. However, if other members was to say 175, I wouldn't be completely against that either. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Dadd, come to you, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I would have great concerns if it was across the whole of the district for a number of reasons. One is my ward is, okay, there's a small part which is a small town, but mostly it is rural. But not only that, a lot of these people have no other means of heating their homes and except electricity. And as we all know, that is exceedingly expensive, particularly in older properties. And I think that this needs to be looked at very, very carefully. And the other thing I feel also quite strongly is that shortly we're going to be a unitary authority. We've already seen that different authorities nearby us have different approaches, and I think it makes more sense to actually wait a couple of months to find out what unitary authority we're likely to be going with, and then communicate with them as well. But I'm very, very strongly against it being in any rural areas for that reason, but also hardship reasons and lack of alternatives. In the towns, and I mean places like, Loughton, Buckhurst Hill, they have opportunities of using gas as well. Very often these days, an open fire is a luxury and not necessarily needed because they have central heating. Not so in the more rural areas, including Ongar. Thank you.
Okay, yes, Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be very brief. I think we've got to be very careful of what we wish for here. And I can understand everybody's quite passionate about what's been said tonight across all areas of the district. But I do think, as with any enforcement, it has to be necessary and proportionate. And as we all know, it's going to be difficult to enforce. I can see legal challenges coming forward where someone's going to actually say, well, yeah, you're saying I'm emitting smoke from the chimney. Well, what evidence have you got that the particulates that I'm emitting are 2.5 and above? That would be a starting point for me if I was going to court to... I know someone's going to turn around and say, oh yeah, but it's only got to be seen as smoke coming out the chimney. But I still believe that we need to be very careful, and I'd rather see that what we should be doing is actually educating people to ensure, one, that the fires are the correct fires and now code compliant, as the law recently changed on the type of burners that you can use. And then the fuel that's being used also has to be a kite mark standard. And I think it's more about education with people. And I would hate to see that the levels of enforcement are like a hammer to crack a nut sort of approach, whereas we should be educating first. Our residents wouldn't thank us, and if anything, our residents would be up in arms. As I know, according to Councillor Dad and myself, some of the rural areas, people rely on heating through this type of wood burner and open fire. Actually, I quite like the smell when I'm walking around the fields over at Matching Green, but we won't go there because that's just another matter with regards to smoke. But the whole approach, I get it, it's a very difficult one. We have signed up to the climate change. I think for me there's either the no change option or probably going for option 3. But quite rightly, as pointed out by Councillor Dad, we have to be aware of devolution coming down the road, and what we don't want to do is tie the district up and then other areas outside of the district are saying, oh no, we're not having that, because it makes us look like we're imposing it on our residents. And I think we need to be very careful how we approach this going forward.
Yeah, I note your comments, Councillor Bedford. What I would say, this is going out for a consultation, so there's no decisions to be made on which, you know, which option is the best one. What I would suggest is that once we've completed the consultation, we come back with the results of that, and then that can be another discussion.
Okay. So, right, if there are no more comments or questions, then can I, similarly to the previous item, can the committee agree to commend the smoke control review to Cabinet, which, as I previously said, will, with the inclusion of comments from tonight's discussion. Can we agree with that? Thank you. Okay, let's move on then to item 14, and that's on page 160. Is the CCTV strategy. Yep, which is the appendix. The appendix. You've got the appendix that Rob gave you, the appendix that was printed out. Sorry, I was just looking for the appendix. Oh, it might be under here. Sorry. Can you just
members of the committee, unfortunately, an appendix to this report wasn't included in the pack. That was emailed to you just before the meeting, and if anybody would like to see a copy of the appendix, which is the programme of replacement, there are some hard copies just in front of James. So I apologise for that, but the best I could do under the circumstances.
Yep. Sorry. Okay.
Sorry, Chairman, can you clarify when this was emailed?
Sorry, Councillor Whitehouse. It was a very quick email, and I did it just to members of the committee. Oh, right. I can send it to you now if you like.
That'd be good.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah. So we should have that appendix there, Appendix 1. Councillor Kesker, did you want to?
Yes, I will introduce again, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
This is CCTV strategy. The strategy covers the period 2025 to 2032. It sets out the Council's current CCTV provision, location, number of cameras, maintenance cost, repairs and replacements for the next 7 years. It provides an overview of the benefits that are realised for local communities in which it is installed and the various uses made of CCTV footage. We have successfully met the current capital programme forecasted under the work programme for 2019 to 2025. The new strategy is required for the ongoing maintenance and replacement of the Council's CCTV infrastructure. The strategy has been extended to cover a 7-year period to 2032 to align with the expected lifespan of the assets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Councillor Dad.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that CCTV, unfortunately, is becoming more and more important in society as a deterrent. to crime, and I think this is very valuable. There are one or two things I'd like to actually, might be some typos as you've probably seen, but there's a couple of things I'd like to ask about, and that is on page 168, the benefits of CCTV, part 5. You say that you record, I've got a few points actually, record the images continually, but why not continuously? And that is a difference. Was that an error, or do you mean it's continual, which means it can be interrupted in the 24-hour period?
Thank you.
And then the next point really is that it's not made clear on page 169 where there's monitored locations between 9 and 5. Can they be expanded or are they set? So you've mentioned several places. Because I think that this is going to be, CCTV is going to be more and more important to us, including, for safer streets, etc. Now, I'm also a bit confused about the revenue, because there's lots of mentions about revenue, and in my view, revenue means income, and yet it's actually referred to in the report from Councillor Keska on page 162 as revenue budget, operational costs. So I'm a bit confused about that, but presuming you mean income, I think it'd be really useful if we can do some more revenue generation, which is on your page 170. And I know that you mentioned about local councils getting involved, and I'd like to know what is being done to increase this service, because if you have more local councils coming into our CCTV network, we're improving our own network, but you're also getting in revenue from that council. And then the other point, and then I have finished, I'm sorry, is on page 171, you're talking about decommissioning, possibility of decommissioning to reduce the ongoing cost, where there hasn't been, it says on page 171, this will focus on CCTV systems that are underutilised in terms of reporting and requests for downloads. But surely that's showing the success of the CCTVs. And if you remove them, they were put there for a particular purpose. So that worries me. But perhaps you can answer those questions. And I'm sorry, there's several there.
Thank you for that, Councillor Dunn. The CCTV, the recording is continuously over 24 hours. So I'll pick that up, so thank you. What happens is that it's recorded onto a drive, and then but it automatically wipes itself after 28 days, and so that it keeps the space clear. So when we get a request come through, anything over 28 days, if we get a request to view the CCTV, then obviously that facility is gone. It would be too costly to try and hold everything. So hopefully that answers your point. In terms of monitoring, so we have an officer that's based in the office 9 till 5, a single officer, which we at the moment because we're an officer down. However, what happens with that is we don't monitor CCTV proactively, like can sit there and watch all of the cameras, because we've got some over 800 cameras in the district. What will happen is that if there's an incident going on, because we've got like a police radio that they may ask for us to look at a camera at that particular time because there might be an incident going on, then that will be proactively monitored to support the police or any of the partners that may request it. So it's a reactive service rather than proactive, and if there's an urgent need out of hours, then the officer will come in and we will obviously download any footage there. So it's a flexible service in that respect. In terms of the revenue budget, I'm not an accountant, and I apologise that I can't answer that properly. However, the revenue budget is the budget that we operate in terms of across a lot of services in terms of it provides maintenance for the units. It's not necessarily an income generation budget. It's about a working operational budget to maintain systems, equipment, uniform. It's all those areas. In terms of income generation, we're always we're always pushing for income generation, and we'll cost up schemes and we'll scope out schemes for parishes and towns as requested, and we will also manage them obviously for a fee to cover that cost. So wherever there's an opportunity for income generation, we will explore that and capitalise on it.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Thank you, that's really helpful. On the point about income generation, are you proactively looking to parish and town councils? And if not, is that possibility that might be an idea? And the other thing is, you haven't answered my question about decommissioning.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Right, in terms of income generation, yes, absolutely, it's something that we want to promote going forwards. At the moment, it's quite challenging just with the one officer, but obviously as we increase the capacity of the team, then obviously that is something that we will explore further. In terms of decommissioning, if we was to keep every single camera and then add on to new ones, it would become an impossible task to maintain them. Where we feel that we might need to decommission a camera, it will be looked at, the data looked at, when it was last utilised, what the ASB hotspots are in the area. Have there been any reports? What's the police data to support that decommissioning? Then, of course, if it was to be taken away and then there was to be an increase, then there's no reason why it couldn't be added back on.
Well, just quickly, Councillor.
Very quickly, would ward councillors be informed about any decommissioning?
Yes, it would be done in consultation with the ward councillors.
Thank you. Can you go over to Councillor Rackham, please?
Thank you, Chair. Big advocate of CCTV. I use it every day at work, so I know how useful it can be. In terms of footage, do you ever download any for the police or council that might need it? And also, is that a job that the monitoring officer would do? And going forward, we do know, as you know, that it does help with crime, it does help with antisocial behaviour, and it does help with fly tipping, all things we've mentioned tonight. So going forward, I wanted to know whether there is a possibility that you will have more mobile deployment units coming into operation. I can see that we've got 10. Because I think that if we can target the hotspots in particular, I know they move. I do think, and I know from my experience, that it does stop certain behaviours if they're put in certain areas. Even if it was for 6 weeks, it does stop the crime. So could I just ask about if we're going to get any more units and about monitoring officers, please?
Yeah, so with regards to downloads, yes, we do get requests for downloads from the police. It could be insurance companies where there might have been a road traffic accident, etc. The CCTV officer downloads those, and well, then there's a very strict data protection protocol that is followed in terms of sharing that, and they're not shared with members of the public. It's shared with the actual agencies themselves. So it's not done by the council's monitoring officer. That's done within the team itself. Yes, there's no cost to the police because obviously they're a partner that we work with, but there is a charge for the time that's taken to download the footage for outside agencies like insurance companies. And so what was the last? The 10 mobile. So yes, we've got 10 mobile units with the funding that we've received from the PFCC for to tackle fly tipping. We've purchased some sort of covert cameras that we can use for that. And obviously we will, as we go through the 7-year programme, where we can expand the mobile cameras because they are extremely valuable, as you've pointed out, for hotspots, then obviously we will undertake that.
Yes, thank you. Councillor George, please. Yeah, okay.
Right, turn it on. Just following on from Councillor Rackham, 6.1, request for CCTV footage. Now, you said that there's a charge, but in here it says CCTV requests are chargeable except for law enforcement agencies such as the police, fine, whilst not widely used, subject access requests are now non-chargeable. Which one is it? It's ambiguous. And then also my other question is, EFDC reserves the right to charge where excessive data is required to cover reasonable expenses. What would be the excessive data? And so, for instance, if it's an insurance claim or someone gets hit walking on the road, do they turn up with a USB and say, can you download it for me? How is that then processed? Thank you. Sorry.
So it really is on a case-by-case basis. Subject access requests we can't charge for because it comes under the Freedom of Information Act. However, we can charge where if there's a request that takes over 18 hours. I'm not completely familiar with the Act, but I'm certain that's what it is. If somebody can come along with a discrete time that needs to be looked at, then obviously that's a much quicker process where and so the officer time is much less, and we provide an encrypted disk for it to go on. Where if it's a big expanse of time, say a week for sort of like 24 hours, then obviously that's quite time intensive. So it really does depend on a case-by-case basis what is required, and it is judged on that.
Thank you. Can I go to Councillor Murray, please, who's online?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Apologies for lateness. I've been at
Oh, sorry. Councillor Murray?
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. Can I just ask, is there declarations of interest at all?
No, not that I'm aware.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so apologies for lateness. I've been at the Town Council meeting, and therefore apologies if the question's already been asked or the officer covered it in her report, but this is one of the items I did want to kind of join the meeting for. I would echo what my Lord colleague has said, Councillor Rackman, and I think I'm reassured by the officer's reply about mobile cameras. I think I would ask the precise question about mobile cameras. Have we got enough kind of mobile cameras to deal with emergency requests as they appear when hotspots come across the district, or are we having to say no to requests that ideally we would prefer to have been able to say yes? So what I'm asking for is the current number of mobile units enough to deal with the hotspots as they come up? And then secondly, I haven't had a chance to really look at it, but we had Appendix 1 circulated. Am I understanding that correctly? Is Appendix 1 when you're telling us when existing CCTV cameras are being replaced in those locations if they're not being decommissioned? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Yes, in answer to your first question around the mobile redeployables, yes, currently we have sufficient. I'm not aware of any cases where we've had a request for one to be deployed that we haven't been able to do that. Obviously, it's very much data-led on reports of incidents and exactly what it's being put there for. With regards to the Appendix 1 to the report, yes, that is the project plan over the next 7 years for the replacement programme of the current ones that we've got at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wiskin, or do you want to? Councillor Wiskin, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify, Councillor Murray's question may have alluded to it. The Appendix 1, it mentions a previous year of replacement on a 7-year programme, quite a few of the entries, well, some of the entries have a zero budget for the subsequent years. I mean, I take Traps Hill Car Park last. Am I assuming correctly that the installation of the last set of cameras was 2017 and there's no plans to any budget to replace them? That would mean there would be, by 2032, there'd be 14 years old. Or am I misunderstanding something?
Okay, thank you.
That's Traps Hill. Sorry. Apologies. What I'd need to do is take this away and have and come back to you separately on that. It could well be that there's an error in the report in the appendix there, but I'll double check that and I'll come back to you separately. Oh, sorry.
Councillor Lyon, can I go over to you, please?
Thanks, Chairman. Just a couple of points. One relates to the use of CCTV. I think what we're talking about here is surveillance. I'm not sure what the current situation is about enforcement, particularly parking and traffic enforcement. I know that we do run into all sorts of difficulties with parking enforcement, and I'm just wondering whether there's any opportunity for the cameras to be used for that purpose. The other point is just a comment that I know that Chigwell Parish Council were looking to re-equip their cameras, and they've been told that the council will take it over, but they've got to bring them up to a certain standard first. So perhaps you could say something about that.
Yeah, regarding we can't use, as a local authority, we can't use cameras for enforcement for parking. Yeah, we can't use ANPR. Local authorities aren't allowed to. It's just legislation.
Okay, thank you.
Second point.
Second point from...
It's from... No,
oh, sorry. Yes, Councillor Lyon, do you want to come back? Or, oh.
Yeah, I can take that away and have a look at that for you. Where we get asked whether we can take over sort of like the monitoring or the responsibility for a town or a parish's cameras that they currently have, then we do have to scope that out and quote for that, because to come onto our systems, they need to be of a certain standard. And what we find is with a lot of the towns and parishes, they haven't maintained them, or they haven't replaced them for a number of years, so they're not compliant with what we need them to be. But yeah, we'll certainly work with them.
Councillor George, please.
Regarding the CCTV, I just want to ask a question. Seeing as we're taking over, transferring over Cottage Lane Car Park, will the CCTV be integrated into the EFDC network? And also, will the CCTV be updated? Because it's been reported by some residents that they're not fully effective, with some being turned round, things happening with on top of the car park where things have been thrown over, residents happening, what was it, air gun, wasn't it, fired at one of the residents at Baker's Lane into the window. So how will it be increased security for the cottage car park, and how much will it also cost, or has that been factored in already into the budget to have more cameras put in and updated, and also will it be integrated into the network? That's it, thank you.
Yeah, it has been considered. A number of site visits at Cottis have taken place with Amelia, that heads up kind of the parking, along with Jess from Mandy's team that heads up CCTV. So, yeah, a detailed site visits and review of the current CCTV systems at Cottis has been undertaken. They will be replaced, they will be upgraded, and they will be integrated into EFDC, and they will be more robust and hopefully less opportunity to be vandalised and moved.
Brilliant. Just come back. Would that be 24-hour CCTV? And then how would that be acknowledged by the police. So something's going on there with the, it's been reported with car swings going on the top floor. How then would that be reported straight away to the police to be there and be active and put something to cease it, yeah? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so if residents are reporting into the police that there's an incident going on at the Cottis Lane and we're aware that there is the CCTV camera that's recording, then they can come to us and request that footage and it'll be downloaded the next day. It won't be downloaded that same night. It's not proactively monitored, it's reactively sort of looked at. So the cost of having somebody just sitting watching a CCTV camera 24/7 is astronomical, and it just wouldn't be feasible.
Okay. Can I go to Councillor John Whitehouse, please?
It's all right, Councillor Cook George has covered everything I might have asked.
Oh.
Thank you.
That's wonderful news. So on that note, then if I, assuming to the previous items, if the committee, if we can agree to commend this report to Cabinet, which also, with the inclusion of the comments from tonight. So could we agree to that, please? Agree, fantastic. Right, so can we then go on to the reports from the chairman of their select committee business, which is on page 173 of tonight's agenda. Okay, so Councillor Lucas, I think over to you on that one, if you would.
Thank you, Chairman. To report on the community scrutiny, the last meeting of community scrutiny was held on Tuesday the 14th of January. There we received an update on the energy efficiency retrofit programme. This outlined how our housing stock would be improved to ensure all properties move towards Band C of the standard assessment procedure by 2030. We had an update on the community lottery, which is providing additional resources to local causes. We also welcomed the Integrated Care Board to consider driving better health outcomes. This was a detailed but important presentation, and the committee supported the proposal to formalise what is already a strong relationship. We had two housing reports, one which was the social housing annual report and the temporary accommodation policy. Both important reports, especially to some of our more vulnerable residents. Comments were provided on both reports before they were considered by Cabinet. As you can see from the work programme, we have covered a wide range of topics this year. The final meeting of the communities for this programme is next week, where we'll be considering the Community Safety Partnership, and I'll look forward to seeing some of you there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. There's a question. Steve, can I go to Councillor Murray's online? Do you have a question, Councillor Murray?
No, mine isn't a question, Chairman, but it's just a reaffirmation of the point that I made at full council on Thursday. And I just want to put on record at this meeting, because it does affect the work programme of communities, that I was unhappy with the mechanism where we arrived, and I'm not blaming anyone, but I am blaming the mechanism. I was unhappy with the mechanism where we arrived with a proposed schedule of meetings that I still think only went to Cabinet. I haven't had it confirmed whether it went to scrutiny or not, but as I said on Thursday, I think the leader was wrong and inadvertently wrong. It wasn't deliberately misleading us that it had gone to scrutiny. But I think this work programme for this year that shows 4 meetings for communities really reinforces the point I was making, that to present us with 2 committees in the programme for next year was just not acceptable. And what did surprise me is that the community's chairman, who's an excellent chairman, may I say, Councillor Lucas, keeping up the Waltham Abbey tradition there, excellent chairman, didn't seem to be aware that change had taken place as well. So I'm just saying that the item before us tonight confirms that it is right that we look for 2 more meetings, and if we don't need them, we cancel them, but at least they're in the diary.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Just to come back on that, there is scheduled to be a report about that at the next ONS meeting about the work programme and the Community Scrutiny Committee. Yep, next meeting of ONS. Okay. Yep. Thank you. Okay, so can we then turn the page and then can we go to Councillor Parsons? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. We had our last place meeting on the 21st of January. Firstly, we received an update on the Epping Leisure Centre. The committee was lucky enough to have a site visit the week before the meeting, so we were able to see firsthand how that was going. And I think most of the all the members of the committee were pleased to see the build was going well, on time, in budget, and we're all looking forward to when it opens. We then had an update on waste collections following the start of TVS. Again, I was pleased to see collections were at 99.9%, almost perfect, and I've had no complaints from residents, and I think all the members of the committee said the same thing, so it's just a testament to how well the service is running so far. Finally, we received a report on the proposed change to blue-lidded recycling bins. That's to replace the recycling sacks that we've got now. Lots of questions and debate on this, but overall the committee were in strong agreement and agreed and recommended that to Cabinet, that those bins were introduced, and I think that's starting later this year. The final meeting was scheduled for yesterday, which was due to be on the Health and Wellbeing Board's annual report, but that was cancelled as the information wasn't going to be available in time for the meeting. There were no further meetings for place this year, but although we've only had a few meetings, I think we've covered some really important issues like the grounds maintenance, waste and the Epping Leisure Centre. So I'd like to finish by thanking my Vice Chairman, Councillor Maria Markham, Laura Kerman from Democratic Services for helping the year, James Warwick. I think everything we've covered, James has been there, so that's great to have him there. And all officers involved producing the great reports. And finally, I thank the members of the committee who were all engaged and provided great scrutiny in the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parsons. That's very interesting, and thank you for those kind words as well. We'll go to Councillor Murray on the line.
Thank you, Chairman. I know it's not an item for discussion tonight, but it was mentioned by the Chairman in his report, and I just wanted to say and put on record my strong objection to the imposition of a third bin across the district to virtually every household. I'm not against that as a model in areas in our district where it works, but I just wanted to put on record that I'm against the imposition on a district-wide basis, because I represent a ward, like probably other members sitting here tonight, where that's going to create considerable difficulty for residents. They've got no rear access, they've got very small frontages, and I think the backlash I've had from some residents is not good. Where residents have got the space and where residents have got access to the rear of their properties, very, very largely in favour, but it's going to cause considerable difficulty for a large number of our residents. Yes, they will probably have to put up with it, and yes, we're going to have three wheelie bins right by their front door, and we're talking about 2 yards away from the pavement, but it's really not acceptable in my view to have imposed it as far as we have, or as far as we're going to. But that's my view for what it's worth.
Thank you for that, Councillor Murray. Councillor Dadd, would you like to come back?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to inform Councillor Murray that we did discuss that issue at scrutiny, and it will be included in exception policy where there is no space at the front. So there is an exception policy.
Thank you. Okay. Can we go to Councillor Janet Whitehouse, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a member of the Place Scrutiny Committee. As the Chairman said, yesterday's meeting was cancelled. It looks as though the update from Qualis Property Solutions, which is one of the items that would have come yesterday, is going to come to a meeting of OSC. Well, I'm wondering what's happening about the health and wellbeing strategy. I'm particularly interested in that. It doesn't seem to be rescheduled at all. So I would like to know when we're going to have that strategy. And also, if you go up to P4, it says that the climate action change is the members' bulletin is mentioned there. I'm not quite sure what that means, but I did ask at Board of Union Scrutiny over a year ago if we could have the quarterly reports in the members' bulletin on what the green, I'm not quite they call it, an officers group, a working group on the action plan and general green issues. It was reported this group was starting, and I know there's great pressure on time and reports and so forth. So I just asked for a just brief update, which would come from their note of their meetings in the members' bulletin, and it was promised, but it's never happened. So can I ask again for a summary of what's happening on the green issues in the members' bulletin on a quarterly basis? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not expecting a reply now, but if you just take it away and look at it.
Yeah, Councillor White, I said, if I just come back to you in relation to the health and wellbeing strategy that was scheduled to go to the place, the Place Scrutiny Committee. The meeting was cancelled to consider that because of the alignment of data that's contained within that strategy. And so the meeting was cancelled. Unfortunately, the next year's work programme will be considered at the first meeting of the overview and strategy, of the overview and what meeting are we at? Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Thank you. It's been a long evening for all of us, hasn't it? That has been up until this stage an annual programme. In relation to the green policy that you mentioned, there was something in the members' bulletin that updated on that. But we'll take that back and either give you a response or you'll see something in the members' bulletin.
Okay, thank you for that as well. Just speaking for myself as chairman of the ONS committee, that there is an amendment to the work programme. The calendar of meetings will be brought to this committee with reference to comments made at council. I think that is regard to the inclusion of the LNG, something about the LGR.
No, that's the calendar.
What's that?
It's the calendar of meetings.
The calendar of meetings, yeah. So this is the penultimate meeting of the overview and scrutiny. The majority of the work is completed. Our next scheduled meeting will be on the 25th of March, where, of course, it's we all look forward to will be annual report from the Epping Forest Youth Council and completed proposed activities. So that's the next meeting. Okay, so now if I can go over to the item 17, cabinet business, which is page 179. Page 179, cabinet business. There have been several issues raised around LGR and the consultation process, and could I ask the leader if he could provide an update? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. As I said, the LGR process really is now in earnest since the government agreed to Essex County Council, Southend and Thurrock going on the priority list for devolution, and as part of that LGR process at the same time. There have been 3 Essex leader meetings so far. The first one was in Chelmsford, the second one was in Braintree. We are currently waiting on the evidence that we require to make a decision on the potential number of unitaries. At the moment, there is no evidence available to make that decision. And this is something that really has to be evidence-led, because you want to make sure that you get the best arrangement of place that you can, but most importantly, they have to be sustainable for the future. And within the government's letter to the upper tier authorities and the second tier authorities, it made a number of very clear criteria, including the preferred number of population, that type of thing. So there's the direction of travel is becoming clearer, but until we have all the evidence, no one should make any decision on the number of unitaries. I'm certainly not wedded to any particular number, and I don't believe anyone else should, although there is a preference with some councils to go for a higher number of unitary authorities. 5 has been mentioned, but there is no evidence to back that up that it would work or be feasible for and the best interest of residents. So I think that's just too soon at this stage. There's a further meeting on Friday. Once we've had that meeting, hopefully things will start to get clearer, and the next response to government is in March. As we will bring that to the cabinet letter to the cabinet meeting, because it's an executive decision with regards to the letter. There's nothing we can do to stop this, because it's the government of our country that has pushed us down this route. I will bring it to cabinet. That's the imperative. I'm also asking for that cabinet meeting to invite Overview and Scrutiny to be in attendance, as we did with the budget process, so that as many members as possible have the opportunity to comment on the letter and what it contains. Following that, I've also, Mr Woodall may have already wrote to group leaders, but I've invited, I've decided to set up a portfolio holder advisory group, because as we go forward, there'll be issues we need to discuss as an advisory group. On that, there will be 3 Conservatives, 2 LRA, 1 Liberal Democrat and 1 Independent, which I've invited Councillor Murray to join the Portfolio Holder Advisory Group because of his many years of experience and knowledge of how the council works. But obviously this is going to be very different, and unitaries are very different to district councils, taking on many of the roles, well, all the roles of the county council, plus what we do as districts, boroughs and cities. So it will be very different. It will be a very different area of interest. I'm fortunate enough to sit on with the Essex Leaders hat on, but also I have, I'm involved in the devolution steering group as well. So it's a really busy time. I seem to start every morning with LGR and finish every day with LGR, and I'm sure members look forward to being engaged fully as we progress down the road a piece.
Thank you, Leader, for saying all that. Yeah. Are there any questions for the Leader at all?
Councillor.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Murray online. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a really important piece of the forward plan, and I just wanted to know what evidence, what decisions have already been taken that evidence was based on in terms of public support. I mean, I've got my own views, and in some aspects I'm supportive of parts of this, and in other ways I'm very much against, but that's immaterial. I'm just interested at this stage, what evidence base have we got that, with Councillor Whitworth's from an Essex perspective, what evidence base have we got that this is something that the people of Essex want to engage in, and what evidence have we got that this is something that the people of Epping Forest want to engage in? I accept that it's something that might be done, and I think, to be honest, it's something that might have been done to us, whoever won the election, because this is something that's kind of crossed the 2 political parties in many ways, the 2 main political parties. But I just wondered what evidence do we have that this is supported, particularly in terms of the feedback I've had, particularly the model of an executive mayor that covers the whole of Essex. That's one of the things that I've heard lots of objections to. And what are we going to do if we find out at some stage that the people of Epping Forest are clearly not in favour of these proposals? Are we just going to go along with it because we feel that we have to? I'm just interested in how the Leader sees that working.
Thank you, Chairman. And of course, I think first and foremost we have to remember this has been a direction of travel over a number of years. Up until the new government, devolution was the real prize that people were looking for, which meant that there would be more control over public transport and skills, the skills agenda, which was going to be passed down from government to the upper tier authorities, where the districts were engaged, but only with no actual rights to be involved, but engaged. The new government has picked up on elements of what was coming through from the previous Boris Johnson government and Rishi Sunak governments around changing local government, because the model was seen to be in need of some changing. Is there a local love of the new system? Not yet. Is there consultation? Well, the government, as you would have seen from press releases, is about to launch a consultation with regards to devolution and the mayoralty. Do I agree with everything? No. Would anyone agree with everything? No. Do I think it's the right thing to do with regards to changing the way that we do local government? The amount of times I've heard people wanting more of a one-shop arrangement is quite often. Do I think that it would be better if you had highways, for instance, in a unitary authority? Yes, I do. And we know that for a fact. Do I think that it would be better to have other things under the control of a unitary authority? Yes, I do. Do I think we're too small to do it as Epping Forest District? The answer is absolutely yes. You have to look at the financial state of councils up and down the country and the continuing strains that they're under. And Epping Forest is no different to any of those other second-tier authorities struggling to keep revenue. You heard from the finance portfolio holder last week, the small proportion of council tax that we take here as a district, and our monies have come from grants and revenue, and we know the government is redistributing our grants away from Epping Forest up to the north and into the cities. So I think the financial platform alone leads you towards unitary councils, and I think the actual delivery of services drives you in that direction as well, particularly around highways. With regards to the mayoralty, that's the first stage. Elections were postponed this year because would you want to waste over £2 million on elections that would have to be rerun in just 12 months' time and fritter that money away when we've got real financial pressures at all levels at the moment? That would just be folly. So therefore, we are where we are. The consultation will be interesting to see the outcome of, Councillor Murray, but I don't see any strong will because I don't think people have realised what's going on properly yet, even though we've put regular press releases out. Most importantly is keeping everybody here informed of what's going on and keeping all the staff informed of going on and the public, as we have more information, informed of what's going on. But it's a direction of travel. We have a majority Labour government who want to see this through. We can either be in there shaping it and making sure we get the best we can for our residents and our businesses, or we can just accept it and have it done to us.
Okay, yep. Thank you for making those points. So I'll go over to the committee if there's any more comments or questions you want to address to the leader. Otherwise, we can move towards closing the meeting. I don't know, Stephen.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah,
Yep.
I've got something on other parts. You've got quite a few pages here, haven't you? I've got one, and they are two Loughton matters. So I want to turn to page 185, part of the housing forward plan.
Which was it, 185?
Yeah, page 185. I just wanted to check that I understood what they were saying. So you've got Council Housing Development Checkers B, that's within the Loughton Road in Ward, hence my interest, but I would be interested anyway. And it says seeking approval to enter into contract following a successful tender process. I'll be very happy if my understanding is correct. Does that mean a tender process for someone to build them as council houses, or is that we're going to we're selling them to a developer? I wasn't sure. And what's happening around Pearls Lane as well? I didn't know how to read that. I know Qualis are Qualis have lost interest in that side. Councillor Matthews told us that at a previous meeting, but that's due to go to Cabinet on the 17th of March. So I just wondered what those two issues are. Are they still sites that are going to be used for social housing, or are they sites that are being sold to the private market, or have I misunderstood things?
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Mandy, if you could come back on that.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. I'll take that away and I'll get the Housing Director, Sergit, to come back to you on the points that you've just raised. Thank you.
Okay. Right, Councillor Wiskin.
Could I ask that those points are shared with us committee members?
Yeah, certainly, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so So I think we'll go on to, there's no reason to exclude exclusion of public and press, we don't need that. So I move to close the meeting at 21:38.